Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. The laughter wouldn't stop. It was too loud, wrong. It echoed off the plaster walls like something trapped inside them, bouncing from corner to corner, bleeding under the bedroom door. At first, Jolene thought it was the television. Maybe she'd fallen asleep with it on again. But when she sat up, rubbing the grogginess from her eyes, the screen was black, remote on the floor. The blue standby light blinking. Her phone was on the nightstand, silent, no calls, no notifications, 2:13 a.m. But still, someone was laughing inside her apartment, a deep, breathless cackle, rising and falling in wild, jerking spasms. It wasn't happy laughter. It was hollow, forced, agonized, the kind of sound someone makes when they've gone too far into madness to stop. She froze, barely breathing. Then a thump. Somewhere in the hallway, something dragging. Jolene's heart slammed against her ribs. She grabbed her phone, flicked on the flashlight, and slipped out of bed barefoot. The floor was freezing, and that smell, like burnt rubber and something worse. Underneath it, coppery, like blood that's been scrubbed but never quite gone. Her apartment wasn't big. 2 bedrooms, a narrow hallway, a kitchen, and a living room that doubled as her work-from-home space. She edged the bedroom door open slowly, heart in her throat. The hallway stretched in darkness, the old wood creaking under each tentative step. Then the laugh again, closer, so much closer. She passed the bathroom, empty, but the moment she reached the hallway's end and peeked around the corner into the living room, her breath caught. There was someone on the couch, sitting perfectly still, their back to her. The room was wrong. The temperature was wrong. The air felt thicker, heavier. Jolene's flashlight shook in her grip as she angled it forward, trying to see. The figure wore a tattered red and white clown suit. One of the sleeves was torn off at the elbow. The ruffles around the neck were browned, scorched. The back of his head looked melted, like the plastic wig had fused into the scalp. Stray strands stuck out like spider legs. Jolene felt her knees weaken. No, it couldn't be. But the shape, the posture, the smell, and when the figure laughed again, deep, guttural and trembling, she knew it was Bryce. Bryce Dunning, the stand-up comic who died 6 months ago, in a fire, at his own clown show. He'd been performing a set dressed like that, juggling butcher knives, downing cheap vodka between punchlines, lighting sparklers taped to his head for laughs. The whole thing was a disaster. The audience didn't know if it was part of the act when the curtains caught fire, or when Bryce stumbled backwards and vanished behind them, engulfed in smoke. By the time security got there, the fire had already eaten the backstage. They found only teeth, melted props, the twisted skeleton of a sledgehammer that had once been part of his act. Jolene had been there, in the 3rd row, the only one who didn't laugh when it started burning. But she had laughed earlier. Hard. Because when Bryce looked out into the audience, he'd locked eyes with her and told a joke no one else could have known. It wasn't from his set, it was personal, private, something he should never have known. What do you call a woman who leaves the only man who ever loved her? Then, begs for him back when she's drunk and jobless? He smiled. Jolene. The crowd laughed. They thought it was part of the show. But Jolene, she froze. She hadn't seen Bryce in 3 years. Not since... No, she didn't tell anyone about that. She didn't have to. She left before the fire trucks arrived. Said she hadn't stayed for the end. Denied she even recognized him. There were hundreds of people there that night. Who would know? But now he was in her living room, dead. Still smiling, still laughing. The figure on the couch turned his head slowly, and when Jolene saw the face, she dropped her phone. Her flashlight beam spun across the ceiling because it wasn't just burned. It was charred beyond recognition. Skin peeled in leathery folds, lips blackened and cracked open in a grin that exposed jawbone. and yet the eyes, fogged and grey, were unmistakably his. "Don't scream," he rasped, voice like static through a gas mask. "It's just me." Jolene staggered backward, hit the hallway wall with a thud. "No, no, you're dead," she whispered. "You died laughing," he finished, standing slowly, one leg dragging behind him. The clown shoes squeaked once, like something mocking reality. "You were there. You watched me burn." She ran down the hallway into the kitchen, slammed the door, locked it, shoved the table in front of it for good measure. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone again. No missed calls, no messages, except as she stared, a new notification popped up. Unknown number 1. Attachment. She almost didn't open it, but curiosity, panic, and disbelief made her thumb move. It was a photo of her sleeping, taken from the foot of her bed. Her blanket was pulled. Halfway down, her eyes were shut, her mouth slightly open. It was definitely last night, definitely her room. She dropped the phone again. Then the whisper came, not from the phone, not from behind the door, from inside the kitchen. "Ready for the encore?" The voice was wet, gurgled, like it bubbled up from something deep. Jolene spun. There was no one there. She backed into the fridge, scanning every corner, every shadow. She could hear the buzzing of the overhead light, her own heartbeat, and somewhere under that, a soft giggle, like a child trying not to be heard. She edged toward the cupboard drawer, grabbed the biggest kitchen knife she owned, and as her fingers closed around the handle, the fridge light went out, the bulb popped, the room was plunged into darkness. Her phone lit up again, another picture. This time, she wasn't in bed. She was in the kitchen. From behind her, she turned. Nothing but. The air felt closer, like someone had just walked past her, like someone had just breathed against the back of her neck. She swung the knife wildly, hit nothing. Silence. Then, slow, deliberate tapping on the kitchen window. 3 times. She crept toward it, trembling, pulled back the curtain. There was no one there, only a handprint from the inside. The police didn't believe her. Of course they didn't. Jolene sat stiffly on the couch as the young officer scribbled something in his notepad, barely hiding the smirk on his face. The other one, older, did a slow walk around her apartment, probably trying to figure out if she was just drunk or lonely. She'd told them everything, or at least everything she could say without sounding completely insane. The laughter, the costume, the smell of smoke, the photos. But when they asked to see the messages, her phone was blank. No unknown number, no pictures in the gallery, nothing in deleted. Just an empty phone, like it had never happened. "You live alone?" Officer Younger asked, glancing around. At the framed art, mismatched furniture, the cluttered coffee table with cold tea and sleep aids. "Yes," Jolene said. "You sure you didn't leave your TV on?" The older one called from the hallway. "Might have been a horror film or something. Dreams can get weird when you—" "I wasn't dreaming." They paused, looked at her. Her hands were clenched so tight her knuckles were white. "I'm not crazy," she whispered. The older cop softened his tone. "We don't think you're crazy, Mum, but you're clearly shaken, and when the mind's under stress, I know what I saw. I know what I smelled. I locked the kitchen. There were handprints inside the window." He looked at the window. "Nothing there now, just her own breath fogging the glass. You got a history with this guy?" The younger one asked suddenly. "The clown?" Her jaw locked. She nodded once. "Years ago, we dated, briefly. Anything you left unresolved?" Jolene hesitated. How the hell could she explain Bryce? The Bryce before the fire, before the clown act, before the obsession with turning pain into punchlines. She'd met him when they were both just trying to get by, 2 struggling artists in downtown Nashville. He was charming, a little intense, but funny in that way that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. They were good together, at first. Then he started talking about how laughter could erase trauma, how he wanted to make people feel things that hurt them and laugh anyway. Jolene told him that wasn't healing. He told her pain was just material. Then came the jokes about her dead brother, the staged pranks that went too far, the therapy sessions he secretly recorded and played back in comedy clubs. She left him, blocked him, told everyone he was toxic, and he disappeared for a while, until the clown show, until that night. She could still hear the roar of the fire in her ears, louder than the laughter, and now he was back, and no one believed her. That night Jolene didn't sleep. She tried. God, she tried. Every creak of the floor, every flicker of a headlight outside sent her bolting upright. Her body was in survival mode. At 3:42 a.m., she finally turned the lamp on and gave up. If Bryce wanted to haunt her, he'd have to do it with the lights. She sat at the kitchen table, drinking stale coffee and scrolling mindlessly through old photos on her laptop, searching for something that might ground her in reality, something that proved she wasn't unraveling. She paused on one from 4 years ago. It was her birthday, a small party, string lights, cheap beer. Bryce was in the background, not smiling, watching her laugh with someone else. She zoomed in. His face was wrong, expressionless. His eyes were wide, glassy, and in his hand, a lighter. Her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't noticed that before. Then, click, the power cut out. Everything went black. No hum from the fridge. No glowing router lights. No street lights through the window. Just silence and cold. Instant cold. Then from her bedroom came a sound that made her whole body seize, jingling bells, like the ones on a clown costume, moving. She stood slowly, grabbed. Her phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi. Just one notification, now playing Encore. It was coming from her speaker. She hadn't even touched the Bluetooth, but somehow it was connected. Music started. Old-timey circus music, warped and slowed down, like a scratched record melting on a turntable, and over it, a voice. His voice. Let's give them what they came for, huh? One last laugh. Jolene grabbed the knife from the drawer again, marched to the bedroom. The music got louder as she approached. Her door was shut, but something was flickering under the gap. Red light. She pushed it open and stopped. Her entire bedroom was covered, in photos, taped to the walls, the ceiling, hanging by strings like a warped art installation. Photos of her, sleeping, eating, crying, laughing in her mirror. Hundreds of them, and in every single one, just barely visible in the background, Bryce. In the mirror, behind the curtains, peeking through vents, smiling, watching. Jolene fell to her knees. She couldn't breathe. She ripped a photo from the wall, one of her brushing her teeth. There, he was, crouched behind the bathroom door. She ripped another, her walking home, Bryce in the alley. Another, her on the couch, watching TV. She had never seen him. Not once. But he'd been there. Always there. Then the mirror above her dresser cracked, and on its own, a voice came through the split glass. Knock, knock. She stood trembling, backing away. No, she whispered. Who's there? The voice said, grinning. No. Your guilt. She screamed and threw the knife. The mirror shattered, the pieces falling in slow motion, and behind it, a hidden space, a compartment, in her wall. Inside was a small, burned notebook. She pulled it out, hands shaking. The cover was blackened, the pages half melted, but she could still read some of it, the final set by Bryce Dunning. It wasn't a diary. It was a script of the clown show, but not the one she saw. This one was different. It included things that hadn't happened, or hadn't yet. Like scene 4, she'll find the photos. She'll understand what I became, that it wasn't a breakdown. It was transformation, and worse. Scene 5. If she wants to be free, she has to laugh. Really laugh, or I'll keep coming back, over and over, until the punchline kills. Her. She dropped the book, because scrawled at the bottom of the last page, written in red, blood maybe, were the words, "This isn't revenge, it's therapy." Then every light in the apartment blinked back on. Normal, power restored, silence, no music, no Bryce, no clown, just her, alone. Jolene fell to her knees, sobbing, but the laptop, forgotten on the kitchen table, flickered. The photo was still open, her birthday. Bryce in the background. But now, he wasn't holding a lighter anymore. He was looking directly at the camera, smiling wider, and behind him, newly visible in the background, was her bedroom, the one she lived in now. Except, the photo was 4 years old. Jolene hadn't left her apartment in 2 days, not since the power outage, not since she found the script. She kept the charred notebook hidden under a loose floorboard, though she wasn't sure why. As if the mere act of possessing it gave Bryce more power. Like she was part of the act now, complicit in his final show. She sat on the floor with her knees to her chest, phone in one hand, the same photo still pulled up, her birthday. Bryce in the background, now impossibly staring out from her current bedroom. It wasn't just paranoia, it wasn't just grief. Time was folding in on itself. Whatever Bryce had started, it wasn't over. But why her? Why now? Her thoughts kept circling back to something he once said, years ago after his first breakdown. When people die laughing, they call it ironic. But what if they're laughing because they know something you don't? He used to chase that moment on stage, the laughter that didn't sound like joy but panic, nervous, borderline psychotic, like a balloon expanding too far. Jolene rose, and from the floor, and walked to her closet. At the very back, in an old shoebox, were the things she hadn't thrown away after their breakup. She shouldn't have kept them, but grief sometimes needs its relics. She opened it. Inside, a photo strip from a carnival booth, a ripped ticket to his first one-man show, a page from his journal, the one she'd stolen during one of his manic spells, then couldn't return. The page had only 2 lines. Pain is the setup, death is the punchline. But what if someone interrupts the act? Her fingers trembled. He always believed the world was his stage. But now it felt like he had scripted his own afterlife, and she was stuck in Act 3. That afternoon, she did what she hadn't done in years. She searched for him online. Bryce Dunning, fire, clown show, obituary. Nothing came up. Not a single article, not a single news clip about the incident, as if it had never happened. But Jolene remembered it, clear as day, the final act of his infamous Red Laugh tour, held in a condemned theater just outside of Nashville. Rumors of a stunt gone wrong, an audience laughing as the stage caught fire until the screams drowned it out. He was supposed to be the only one who died, or so she thought. She clicked deeper. Reddit threads, obscure forums, fringe, conspiracy blogs. Then she found it, a page titled Jester's Wake, The Hidden Deaths of the Clown Cult. The headline, you laughed, they burned. Now they want their encore. There were claims 15 people had died in the aftermath of that final show, not at the venue, not all at once, but over time. One drowned, laughing hysterically. In her tub, another crashed into traffic, still wearing face paint. One was found dead in a motel, the words laugh track carved into his chest. No official connection, no charges filed. But in every case, there was one thing in common. They had all attended Bryce's last show. Jolene's blood ran cold. She hadn't gone that night. She was supposed to. He had begged her, but she never showed. She couldn't watch him self-destruct. He had called her that night, screaming at her voicemail, I needed you in the audience. I needed you to see me. You killed the laugh, Joe. You killed it. Then the line went silent. She'd never heard his voice again, not until last night, and now all these people were dead because they had laughed. But Jolene, she never did. The doorbell rang. Jolene nearly dropped the laptop. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her heart thundered in her chest. The peephole showed a woman, mid-40s, tired eyes, holding something close to her chest. Jolene opened the door just a crack. Yes, are you Jolene Price? The woman asked, her voice brittle. "Who's asking?" The woman hesitated, then lifted a photo. It was of Bryce and her together, smiling, happy. Jolene's breath caught. "I'm his sister," the woman said softly. "His real sister, not the one from the act, not the actress. I've been trying to find you." Jolene opened the door wider. The woman stepped inside. Her name was Mara Dunning. She had been estranged from Bryce for almost a decade, couldn't deal with his obsession, the comedy cult he formed, the way he stopped being a person and became a character. But she had come because Bryce had left her a letter, a sealed envelope, and it was addressed to Jolene. With shaking hands, Mara handed it to her. Jolene sat down and tore it open. Inside was a single page, typewritten. It read, "Joe, if you're reading this, then I guess my little curtain call worked. Maybe you've seen what I've become. Maybe you hate me again. But I needed you to know. I didn't burn. They put me in that fire. They said laughter wasn't enough. They wanted fear. They called themselves the Order of the Final Joke. They made me rewrite the end. The screams you heard, that was the real act. I tried to stop them. I tried to walk off stage. They laughed anyway. And now I'm stuck between the punchline and the grave. If you're reading this, it means they're not done. You were supposed to be in the audience. But you weren't. That's why you're the only one left. Finish the act, Joe. Make them stop laughing, or they'll make you join the encore." Jolene dropped the page. Her hands were ice. A cult? They killed him? A stage sacrifice? And now the haunting made sense. The photos, the voice, the obsession with her laughing. It wasn't just Bryce tormenting her. It was them, finishing what they started, trying to pull her into the script she had walked away from. "Do you know anything about this group?" she asked Mara, voice shaking. Mara nodded, her face pale. "I think they're still out there. Bryce told me once, when the last laugh dies, the curtain falls for good. What does that mean? I think it means, if you don't laugh, if you don't give them the ending, they'll keep coming. But he's the one haunting me." "No," Mara said. "He's warning you." Jolene staggered back. The script in the wall, the changing photos, the cracked mirror. All of it was a message. Bryce had become something twisted, a spirit bound by a performance he never wanted to finish. And the only way to free him was to stop the audience, the ones still laughing. That night Jolene lit every candle she owned. She opened every curtain, laid the burned script on the table, and whispered, "Bryce, I see you." The lights flickered. A cold breeze passed through the apartment, though the windows were shut, and the mirror on her hallway wall began to fog from the inside. 3 words formed in the condensation. Scene 6. Begins. "No," she whispered. "It ends now." The fog cleared, replaced by a face, his face. Tears of ash down his cheeks, mouth painted in a cruel red grin. He didn't laugh. He just stared and whispered one word. "Run." Jolene turned. Someone was in her kitchen. Not him, someone else, wearing a clown mask made of skin, and laughing, but not like a person, like a recording, warped, looped, mechanical. She grabbed the knife again, but the figure didn't move. It just pointed to the TV, which flickered on, a grainy video, a room, this room, from a bird's-eye angle, live. The figure pointed again, to the ceiling. She looked up. A small red light blinked, a hidden camera. Her apartment was the new stage, and the audience still watching. The next morning, Jolene packed a bag with only the essentials: her phone, Bryce's burned script, the letter, and a hunting knife from the kitchen. She left behind everything that didn't matter anymore. This wasn't about survival now. It was about ending the act. She had a list, the 15 names of those who died after Bryce's final show. Not all had been released to the public, but the Jester's Wake Forum had compiled what it could. Some were vague, just initials and stories. Some were concrete, a name, a city, a date. One stood out, Andrea Lemley, died 6 months after the fire, age 47. Autopsy said heart attack, but neighbors claimed they heard her laughing at 3 a.m. for hours. Before she collapsed, her body was found slumped in a rocking chair, the word encore written in lipstick across her mirror. Andrea had a daughter, still alive, still in the same house. Jolene drove 4 hours to a rust-colored house on a silent street in Decatur, Alabama. The mailbox was cracked. The lawn hadn't been mowed in weeks. The house leaned slightly, as if trying to back away from the world. She knocked. No answer. Then a voice behind the door. "What's your favorite joke?" Jolene froze. "What?" The deadbolt slid open slowly. A pale, sharp-eyed girl in her 20s peeked out. She looked like she hadn't slept in years. "You're not with them," the girl said flatly. "They never pause when I ask." Jolene stepped back. "With who?" The door opened wider. The girl studied her for a long time, then said, "You'd better come in." Her name was Kelly Lemley. Her mother was a laugher, as she called them, someone who saw the show, didn't take it seriously, and laughed too loud. That laughter, Kelly believed, marked them, cursed them with what Bryce called the final joke. "They want witnesses," Kelly whispered, drawing shapes in dust on her table. "Not fans, not friends, just people who laugh when they shouldn't." "What happens if you don't laugh?" Jolene asked. Kelly looked at her like she already knew. "You survive." Kelly reached under the couch and pulled out an old VHS tape. "They left this after my mom died, just sitting on our front steps." Jolene stared at it. There was no label, just a hand-drawn smiley face bleeding from its mouth. "I can't play it. I smashed every tape player we had," Kelly whispered. "But I kept it, just in case someone like you ever came." Someone like me. Someone who didn't laugh. Someone they're still waiting for. Jolene didn't sleep that night, not in her motel, not in the car, not for a second. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Bryce, his face split by that unnatural red grin. His eyes wide with warning, and the words he wrote, "You were supposed to be in the audience. But you weren't. That's why you're the only one left." She replayed it in her head. She didn't laugh. She didn't go. She didn't finish the act. But now she was being dragged back into it. The cult, this order of the final joke, had turned her entire life into a stage. So maybe she had to turn their stage against them. She went back to the forums, dug deeper, found references to a place over and over. A name hidden between cryptic jokes and offhand remarks. The funhouse below, not a real funhouse, not a carnival attraction, a basement. An underground space beneath a condemned comedy club in Georgia. Most believed it was just a myth, but Jolene had been inside enough nightmares to know myths had teeth. 2 nights later, she stood in front of it. The club was boarded up, its sign a flickering ruin. Chuckle Pit, fitting name for a place that once held murder in makeup. Jolene pried open a rotted side door. Inside, the stage was buried in dust and mold. Rows of broken chairs, a shattered mic stand. She found the entrance behind the bar, a locked trapdoor, and on it a painted message, "Backstage passes only." She placed her hand on it. It opened. The air below reeked of blood, grease paint, and rot. She climbed down the ladder into pitch black and waited. Then, one by one, old bulbs above her flickered on, red, blue, green, each one popping on with a soft laughter track. She followed. The hallway, at the end, a door, on it a plaque, "The Final Joke, starring you." She pushed it open and froze. It was a perfect replica of her apartment, down to the couch. The cracked mirror, the painting she never hung straight, but something was off. The photos on the wall had changed. Each showed her, but not her now. Her dead. In one, she was hanging from a noose. In another, burned beyond recognition. In a Third, smiling, her jaw dislocated, mouth stretched impossibly wide, a monitor on the desk flicked on, and Bryce appeared. Or the thing that used to be Bryce. His mouth was smeared with black, his laugh fractured. "Joe," he said. "Welcome to the real set." She stepped back. "No more running," he whispered. "They're ready, curtains up." Behind her, a door opened. Laughter poured in. Not human, like tape stuck on rewind. Jolene turned and saw them, figures in clown masks, some with real faces stitched to their hoods, all clapping, slowly in perfect rhythm. One stepped forward and removed their mask. A woman, dead-eyed, familiar. She spoke. "You were the last audience member, Jolene. Now you're the finale." Jolene didn't scream, didn't cry. She stepped forward, pulled Bryce's burned script from her coat, and read from it. Pain is the setup, death is the punchline. But what if someone interrupts the act? The room fell silent. Even the laughter stopped. Jolene locked eyes with Bryce's image on the screen. "I'm interrupting." She pulled a lighter from her pocket, lit the edge of the script. Flames roared, the walls began to peel, the apartment set cracked, the floor beneath her trembled. And Galt screamed, a sound like dying animals. The screen glitched, Bryce's face twisted, not in pain, but in peace. He smiled and vanished. The room exploded in flame. Jolene awoke on the sidewalk outside the Chuckle Pit. It was morning. The building was gone. Nothing but ash. In her pocket, the letter from Bryce. But something had changed. A new line had been added at the bottom, in the same typewritten font. "Thank you for not laughing. The show's over now." Jolene didn't dream for 3 nights. No screams, no shadows, no Bryce. Just empty blackness, like the show had finally ended. But on the 4th night, the dream came back. She was in a theater, not burning, not broken. New, polished seats, velvet. Curtains, every seat was filled, but the people had no faces. They were mannequins in funeral clothes. Each one sat motionless, heads tilted slightly toward the stage, and on stage, Jolene stood, wearing Bryce's old clown makeup, the same red smile, the same sad eyes. She tried to scream, but her jaw was locked. Then a single word echoed from the dark, "Encore." She woke up sobbing. That morning the mailman left a package. No return address, just her name in red letters. Inside, a DVD. And a note. "You stopped the show, but the audience is still watching." Her hands trembled as she slid the DVD into her laptop. The screen flickered. Then footage of her, breaking into the Chuckle Pit. Footage of her, lighting the script. Footage of her burning down the room. Only she wasn't alone in the video. In the background, behind every scene, stood a tall figure in a featureless clown mask, watching, never moving, even when the flames rose, even when she screamed. It had been there the whole time, and she never saw it. She showed the footage to Kelly Lemley. Kelly went pale. "That's him," she whispered. "The one who never speaks. He's not part of the cult. He's older, deeper. I think—" She hesitated. "I think he wrote the first joke." Jolene returned home shaken. She locked every door, covered every mirror, slept with the lights on. For 3 nights nothing happened. Then on the 4th, the laughter started again. It came from her kitchen, soft at first. Then louder, higher. She crept out of bed and walked barefoot toward the sound. The lights were out, the fridge was open. On the kitchen table, a clown nose, still wet with something dark. She turned to run, and found her bedroom door wide open. On the wall above her bed, a message was smeared in red. "The final joke hasn't been told." That same night, Kelly went missing. Jolene drove back to Decatur. The Lemley house was dark. The back door broken in, the bedroom torn apart, and in the middle of the floor, the same DVD she'd watched days ago. But this one had a new title written in Sharpie. The new script, Act 2. She didn't want to watch it, but she had to. The footage opened in Kelly's room. She was crying, tied to the chair, her mouth taped shut. Behind her stood the faceless clown. Then, a voice. From behind the camera. Jolene's voice. Reading something. Why did the girl refuse to die quietly? Because silence isn't funny. Kelly looked straight into the lens, tears spilling down. Then the clown raised one hand and cut the screen to black. Jolene slammed her laptop shut. She didn't remember saying those words, didn't remember filming anything, and yet that was her voice. Someone was using her, possessing her. No, worse, rewriting her. She ran to the mirror, stared at her own face. For a second, just a flicker, she didn't see herself. She saw a mask, white, blank, smiling. Then it was gone. Desperate, Jolene returned to the burned ruins of the Chuckle Pit, or what was left of it. The ashes were cold, but the basement trapdoor was still there, half buried in char. She climbed down, but the room wasn't empty. Someone had rebuilt it. Not the fake apartment this time. This was a theater, seats, curtains, lights. And on stage, Kelly, gagged and bound, and in the front row, watching silently, was Jolene. Another Jolene. A perfect double smiling, makeup running down her cheeks. Jolene blinked, and the whole vision flickered. A hallucination, a vision, a warning? She staggered back and stepped on something, a script page, burnt at the edges, but the words were fresh. Ace T3. She walks right into it. She never learns. Jolene dropped the page and fled. The next day her phone rang. Blocked number, she answered anyway. A child's voice whispered, "Knock, knock." She didn't reply. The voice said again, "Knock, knock." Still nothing. The voice changed. Became hers. Knock, knock. And then the call ended. She drove out to her family's old cabin in the mountains, the place her father took her once after her mother died. The only place she'd ever felt safe. There was no signal, no power, just silence. She stayed there 3 days. No clowns, no laughter. She started to believe it was really over until she went outside one morning and found footprints in the snow. Big, heavy, leading. In circles around the cabin. No entrance, no exit, just circles. The prints ended directly beneath her bedroom window. She followed them back around and found something wedged into the cabin door, a hand puppet of herself, its mouth sewn shut, its eyes replaced with clown buttons. Jolene sat on the floor, shaking, the puppet in her lap. She realized something horrible. It wasn't about laughter anymore. It was about performance. The cult had never wanted to kill her. They wanted her to become the final act, the tragedy, the punchline. The ghost of Bryce wasn't trying to scare her. He was trying to stop her from walking back on stage, from finishing the script. But it was too late. She was already inside the final scene. The audience was waiting, and she was the joke. That night, she woke, up choking. Something was in her mouth. She staggered to the mirror, clawing at her lips, a piece of paper, shoved deep in her throat. She yanked it free, soaked in blood. The words on it were scrawled in smeared ink. "Time for your final line." She turned and saw the figure at the window, tall. Mask shining in the moonlight, the faceless clown. It didn't move. Didn't speak, just raised one finger, pointed at her, then slowly drew it across where its throat would be and vanished. Jolene collapsed. She finally understood the truth. Bryce hadn't died from the fire. He'd died from fighting the script. The final joke isn't just a curse, it's a role. It consumes the survivor, forces them to live out the last page, until the horror becomes the only reality. Until you aren't a person anymore, you're a performance. Jolene wept because she knew what part 6 would be. The last laugh. Jolene stopped running. There was nowhere left. The cult had scattered. Their leaders vanished into fog. Kelly was presumed dead, her body never found. Bryce's charred photo still sat in Jolene's pocket like a stone. She hadn't eaten in days. She barely spoke. Even her own reflection had stopped responding. She was no longer Jolene. She was what was left of her. And now, it was time. The letter came at midnight, typed, no return address. Inside, just one sentence. You may deliver your final line at the place where he first laughed. She didn't need to ask what that meant. She already knew. The chuckle pit had been demolished 2 weeks ago, but beneath the debris, the old storm tunnel still ran underneath, a place once used to smuggle stage props in the 60s. That was where Bryce had taken her after his first performance. It was where he said the stage made him feel real, and now it was where she would say goodbye to herself, to everything. The air in the tunnel was wet and sour. She carried only a flashlight and a recorder. She wanted someone, anyone, to know the truth if they found her. She pressed record. Her voice, cracked and cold, filled the darkness. My name is Jolene Taverner. If you're hearing this, I'm already gone. I'm about to walk onto the final stage, and if you've seen them, the ones with the white faces, the red smiles, if you've heard the laugh that isn't laughter, run. Don't stay for the show. They're not clowns. They're editors. They rewrite who you are until the only thing left is what makes. The audience clap. She clicked the recorder off, and then the tunnel opened. The room beyond was impossible. Not old, not rotted, not broken. Brand new. Seats upholstered in rich velvet. Chandeliers above. The stage trimmed with golden tassels. And the audience. They weren't mannequins this time. They were real, dozens of them, eyes wide, faces pale. Some whispered, some cried, and yet none stood to leave. They watched, as if unable to look away, and on stage, at the center, a chair. The same kind Bryce had died in. Jolene stepped forward. No one spoke, not until the spotlight hit her. Then came the voice from above. From nowhere, from everywhere, the voice of a child. Welcome back, Jolene. She sat. The script was already waiting on her lap, her name on every page, each line soaked in red ink, each word already lived. She flipped to the end. The final line. She laughs. Simple, cruel, certain. Her breath caught, and then she saw them. In the crowd, Bryce, not burned, not smiling, just sad. Next to him, Kelly, her eyes pleading, a mother she barely remembered, a version of herself. Age 6, smeared in clown paint, each face someone she'd lost, each one trapped in this cursed audience, frozen, watching her fall. Again, she stood, voice shaking. No, she whispered, I won't say it. I won't finish this. The light dimmed. The child's voice returned. Then the show will go on forever. She looked up. The ceiling cracked. Shadows poured in. The faceless clown stepped onto the stage, 7 feet tall. Still, smiling, he handed her the nose, red, soft, warm. With blood, she let it fall. It bounced, then vanished. Jolene turned to the crowd, tears in her throat. If I laugh, I become them, don't I? No answer. But the audience leaned closer, waiting, yearning, hungry. One final performance, one last joke, and the punchline was her. She turned to the faceless clown and smiled. I understand now. It tilted its head. You're not here to make people laugh, she whispered. You're here to break them, twist them into shapes the world will never believe. That's what horror really is, isn't it? Taking something pure and making it entertaining. A pause. Fine. She picked up the mic. The room fell to silence. Then she said, Why did the girl step into the fire again? No answer, because no one clapped the first time. And she laughed. Long, ugly, real. The room shook. The chandeliers shattered. The audience screamed, not in horror, but in relief, because the story had ended, and endings always feel safe. But it wasn't safe. Not really. They found her 2 days later, curled in the tunnel, arms wrapped around her knees, rocking. She had ripped out her tongue, carved words into her legs with broken glass. I told the joke. She wouldn't speak again, but sometimes she still laughed, late at night, and the nurses said when she did, every television screen in the facility would flicker, and somewhere deep inside the building, someone or something would whisper, "Encore." Epilogues. X months later, an off-Broadway producer bought the rights to a play, anonymous submission, no known writer, just a title, The Final Joke. The play sold out. 3 attendees never came home. One actress clawed her face off during curtain. Call the theater burned down on closing night. Inside the ruins, investigators found a scrap of paper nailed to a dressing room wall. The joke isn't what kills you. The laugh keeps you alive just long enough to hear it again. The end.